Welcome. I'm here with Pouroto and with Anna, and we're here to discuss some of the most commonly received questions we have about the situation that's happening on Owairaka. So the first question that I see on social media all the time is people of all walks of life asking that Māori finally got their land back. Why won't you just let them do whatever they want with it?
Well, there's a saying, ko hau te whenua, ko te whenua koe, I am the land and the land is me. So from the beginning of time when our ancestors occupied here over 3,500 years ago, the responsibility of the guardianship and the stewardship and looking after and maintaining, preserving, keeping the land safe was the main priority that our ancestors did. Looking after the life force of the land. So colonisation came, and then that whole ability in terms of our cultural responsibility was taken away. In recent times, under what we call now the Waitangi Tribunal Act enabled Māori now to be heard, and also to put their grievances in relation to the Crown to be able to address those issues now. So in recent times, let's say 2017, all the maunga were returned back to the local iwi in Auckland, which is a good thing. What's important though, because the ownership and the cultural values and the ways in which we look after the land, Māori, to protect the life force, wairua, that everything has spiritual essence in it, and it's a taonga tukuiho. It's a gift given from our ancestors for us then to hand it on to future generations. But in saying that, the relationship between Māori and Pākehā and other New Zealanders is really important because that is based on the Treaty of Waitangi. So that partnership is important, how we work that together, even though Māori now have the ownership over that in terms of the legislation, but the partnership is about how we work and that together in partnership as Māori and Pākehā. But that's key. I think that's very key. The other part is the protection. I think that's really the issue. It's about the protection of, in this instance, say the trees and the mountains in Auckland there. You know, if we don't look after that, then we have an environmental issue. You know, climate change, those things are really quite imminent upon us. If we don't do that, there'll be nothing to hand on to future generations. So Article 3 about reciprocity, what we give back to the land gives back to us. How we work in terms of the treaty partnership is important because it's that relationship, that partnership that enables us to then protect the land that's been given back to Māori, which will have a beneficial benefit for all of us from a spiritual, cultural, and us as people working under the Treaty of Waitangi. The land can be handed on for everybody, and I think that's what's really
Yeah, look, I totally agree with what Pouroto is saying, and Honour the Maunga is very much coming from an environmental perspective. You know, we care deeply about the Maunga's environment and its benefit to all of us, no matter who you are. But I would just like to pick up on what Pouroto said about the treaty partnership, because I think what a lot of people don't realise is that the treaty settlement for Auckland's Maunga, the Collective Redress Act, although it placed ownership with Mana Whenua, it actually required the land to be held in trust, and I quote here, for the benefit of Ngā Mana Whenua and the other peoples of Auckland. Now, the other peoples of Auckland includes people of all cultures, including Māori, who were not part of that treaty settlement. The other thing that people don't realise is that the Reserves Act actually sits over top of the treaty settlement. So in Owairaka's case, it's a recreational reserve, which guarantees public access. So it's not as simple. I think a lot of people think that Honour the Maunga has gone and basically set up and like it's akin to setting up in somebody's backyard. It's not like that whatsoever. Also, to reflect that treaty partnership, the Te Puna Maunga Authority was set up as a co-governance organisation. So half of its voting members are iwi representatives and the other half are Auckland Council representatives. And so in questioning taking out all of the exotic trees at once, which would be an environmentally devastating thing to do, we're questioning the council representatives on the authority as much as anybody, in fact, more than anybody. And if you destroy the environment, no one benefits from that. So to us, it's not a racial issue, it's very much an environmental issue. Also, just very quickly in summary, what people fail to realise is the authority never consulted with iwi about all the other people of Auckland about removing all the exotic trees in a short space of time. That decision came about from an authority staff member making the decision in consultation with the chairperson and Treescape, which is an agriculture corporation that stands to make millions of this. There was never any discussion or meeting or vote with iwi or the council representatives or communities about doing this. So the issue is far more complex than how it's being portrayed in the media.
Thank you both. The second question, and it segues into what you're both saying, that is frequently asked is, does Honour the Maunga actually have any Māori support? Does it have any mana whenua support? Is there any, are we just using Māori faces as tokenism? That's a question that comes up a lot.
Well, the most important thing here, he hata manu o tēnei ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Ka hutia te rito o tahara ke hira te koe te kumako e ko. It's simply likened to that proverb, if I should pluck out the centre shoot of the flax bush, then where shall the bowerbird rest? Let it be known on the land, the sea, and the world, what is the greatest thing, and my response is people. And that's a very important Māori proverb that's held the test of time in terms of our relationships with non-Māori, with all cultures, with all people. So I'm saying that the position that Ngāti Awa ki te Awa Tātua have taken, Ira Moko Marae, I as the leader of the hapu of the Tāwera, believe that the philosophy and the vision of Honour the Maunga is the same as the vision of our people. Tiakina te taiao, mā te taiao no tātara tiakirawa. And it's about looking after the environment. If we look after the environment looks after us. And that's why we've come forward because of that. It's a big issue. There's been no racial issues at all. Right? And then even in my culture, there's no such thing as racism. It's only happened in recent times. And it's all about power and control, mainly based around capitalism and money. For us, it's about looking after the spirit, the mauri of the land, looking after the wairu of the land, looking after the mana of the land. And if we're wanting to reflect the true treaty relationship and partnership, it's not just about partnerships with the Crown. You know, that's only one part of the relationship. It's not just about government and agencies. Actually, the real partnership starts at the grassroots of our local communities. And that is really important. It must be also remembered that, you know, Māori trust boards, they're only one part of the decision making in terms of what we do as Māori, in terms of decision making. Whānau Hapuniwi is centralised in Māori. That's where the true power is. And with our hapu at the grassroots, where the people live, where we are every day in terms of what we do and we represent our ancestors, particularly in this position here. We've made a connection, a strong one. Owairaka herself actually called us to the mountain. And it was at that moment in time that our spiritual energies were connected with Honour the Maunga. It wasn't something that we knew that would happen. It was a spiritual gathering. So there's a lot of spiritual energies that bring us to people in time and place, look after and protect. At this time, it's about building the relationships, looking after and protecting the relationships between Māori and non-Māori. And Honour the Maunga is an important part of that for us. You can't have a true treaty relationship if you only got one partner. So I, as the leader of my hapu, I don't have any concern about what others do, what they think, but under the mana of my ancestors and my people, I've made that decision with the support of my people. And I'm glad I've made that decision because the important thing here is looking after and protecting the environment of Owairaka, looking after protecting the trees there, the bird life. I mean, we say that, I am the land and the land is me. I am the mountain is me, you know. Owairaka's essence also is an important part of that relationship, and sharing that with Honour the Maunga and others who have been part of that process with us who support this is the key to move forward in transformation and empowerment, so that we can ensure that the environment that we live in now is not going to be a non-environment issue in the future, because it's bigger than us. It's about, are we going to ensure that with the relationship with Honour the Maunga and us, as tangata whenua, me, mana whenua, as Ngā Te Awa ki Te Awa Te Atua, I Rama ko marae, that this can only be achieved together through understanding, through support, through acknowledgement, through respect, and that's the position that we take. And the tikanga is really important. So there's been no breach of tikanga in my perspective as a leader of Māoridom. In fact, the guidance of that has been given by myself and other leaders within Tāmaki Makaurau who participated. And if you're seeing some of the activities that we've been involved with over the last few months, it's there, that we aren't alone, that there are people that believe in looking after the trees, looking after the land, looking after the essence of the histories and the narrations that connect us to the Maunga. And I think that's what's important, and the relationship with Honour the Maunga is very important for us moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, we get accused of being tokenistic, and you know, like at the end of the day, the people who support us, and we have people from numerous cultures, Māori, I mean, it's not only Pouroto, but interestingly enough, one of our very strong supporters and members is a Māori woman who plans to occupy Mount Richmond o Tāhuhu herself. Now, that doesn't fit with the narrative in the media about this being a Pākehā versus Māori issue. We have Māori people, we've got Chinese, we have people of mixed ancestry, you know, like a Middle Eastern and Indian and Nuayan. I'd say you name it, we've got it in our organisation. And so it's not about tokenism, it's about what's in people's hearts. And the people who are drawn to Honour the Maunga, no matter what their racial background is, that's irrelevant to us, is that we care deeply about Papatūānuku, Mother Nature, call her what you will, about the environment. And so to try and make this a racial issue is actually distracting from the essence of what this is all about. Now, we also get asked about mana whenua, and that's a really interesting one, because if you look at all the debate on this issue in the media, what's been really interesting is I don't hear the mana whenua voice. It's the authority, the chair, and these trumped up experts, of which there have actually been very few speaking publicly, in fact only really one, and a few academics out there, but the only mana whenua voice that voices I've heard in the public domain has been Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei criticising the authorities' processes that it's followed and saying that it sees value in using the exotic trees to shelter the native trees, and also the support that Honour the Maunga received from kaumata of Ngāti Whātua and Tainui descent, who actually held a pōwhiri for us on the Maunga back in January to welcome us. But of course, you know, that doesn't suit the media's narrative either, so that was barely reported. So, you know, there's a lot of nuancing in this whole issue, and I, for one, would love the opportunity to engage with mana whenua and hear more of mana whenua's voice over this, not the authority, because the authority never consulted with mana whenua about its plans to clear fell all the exotic trees. They never specifically consulted with mana whenua over that. So I find it very interesting that the only mana whenua voices that have been in the media on this have not been in support of that action.
Thank you. Yes. And this goes into our next question in a beautiful way. So what is often presented is this idea that the exotic trees are actually detrimental to any native forest that could be brought back on Owairaka or anywhere else. So can you speak to that in whatever way that it comes to you, whether it's about the Māori and the Wairua or whether it's about ecology?
The important element of all of this is to understand that the mana of the land is something that does not belong to us. My teaching is wherever I go, you know, I follow the footprints of my ancestors, and wherever they stand and wherever they speak, I speak. Wherever they walk, I walk. Wherever they've left the legacy of the history of that space and place and location, it's my responsibility also to look after and protect that. We don't own land. You know, that's my view as Te Tāwera, as Ngāti Awa ki te awa te atua i Ngaropo marae. The land is our mother. You know, we are connected to the land. Everything comes forth from the land. From the beginning of time, I o matua kore, the creator of all things, created te pū, te more, te weo, te akatere, te wauni, te kumi, te whea, te kore, the cosmos. Rangi, Father Sky, Papa Tuanuku, Mother Earth. And from their union came Tāne, and then from there came forests. So, and then from Tāne also came us as humans, ira tangata. So there is a connection that connects us to everything that is. So there's no differentiation between what is exotic and what is native. If everything comes from the land, it is of the land. If everything comes from the earth, it is of the earth. So the brother tree is a brother to me, because the spirit in me is the same as the spirit in the tree. I think that's something that's really important about that. The exotic trees that have been transported also on my waka mātātua, for example, the karaka tree was an exotic tree that came from one of the islands of Rarotonga called Moke. And when our ancestors came and settled in and around Auckland, Toroa, Wairaka's father and her, planted the first karaka tree 800 years ago on top of Owairaka. Hence the name Te Pā Wairaka, Wairaka's pā, Wairaka's home. So that is an exotic tree, and I don't know what the issue is. I can't understand why people can't see through my eyes that the native tree and the exotic tree are all trees and all children of the earth and have the life force of the Creator in it. Therefore, we are brothers. So that's what's really important here to understand that. And the important issue is, for me, is that is it appropriate for us to totally disregard the tikanga Māori? That is, to understand and value the spirit of the trees without any with any proper consultation with all of us in terms of our connection to the life force of the trees. You know, there's a lot of us that have connection. It's not just about one group. There are many people who have connections to the life force of the mountain and the exotic trees and the native trees. We need to be consulted. Wairaka's presence is still there. She lives in the trees live within her, and the essence of Wairaka lives in us. And so that's what's really important. There's no issue. The issue is this, is that are we going to not be sensitive in terms of tikanga and respect in this instance, where we're not actually thinking about the mana of the trees and the spirit of the trees, and how that whole ecology, that whakapapa system, you know, if you just rip something out, it's going to destroy everything that's there. That's wrong. This is not about mana whenua in this instance, it's about protecting the land. It's about protecting the life force and the spirit of Wairaka that still exists there. Her essence is there in the trees. My responsibility as a guardian is to protect the mauri of the trees, which then protects the mauri of the mountain, which then protects the mauri of Wairaka, but more importantly, protects that relationship and the spiritual mauri of us as people. And that's what's important. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting, this whole one about exotics being bad for the natives. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Go for a walk up on Owairaka, Mount Albert, and have a look for yourself, and you will see thousands and thousands of healthy native, and it is 99.9% native self-seeded plants, trees that will become trees, living and flourishing underneath exotic and native trees alike. The birds don't distinguish between the trees. In fact, a lot of the native birds, kakas, a classic example, tui, kariru, actually rely on the exotic trees as much as the natives for food and habitat. We have been contacted by arborists and ecological specialists from all over New Zealand who won't speak out publicly because a lot of them rely on the Auckland Council or Te Punamonga Authority for work, so they're frightened to speak out. And they've said we're absolutely on the right track with our concerns about the fact that you need the exotic trees, the existing mature trees, exotics and natives there for succession planting practices. I recently obtained a DOC report through an Official Information Act request, and it was on Owairaka, and DOC was expressing significant concern about the impact that clear felling the exotics in a single stage would have on the remaining native vegetation, on the native plantings, and on the flora and on the wildlife. So, at the end of the day, this is all of us. It doesn't matter whether you're mana whenua or non-mana whenua, Māori or Pākehā or Chinese or African. It doesn't matter who you are. We all need a healthy, flourishing environment. The Maunga actually needs its trees, and good succession to native vegetation actually should be taking decades, not months. Destruction benefits nobody, and it doesn't actually redress the wrongs of the past. This is not going to fix the ills of colonisation. This is actually just going to probably feel good for a little bit and create a lot more problems further down the track, environmentally, culturally, in many different ways.
Thank you both. I think you've both spoken to the next question quite beautifully already. And that is, does decolonization require the environment to be sacrificed in its name? I had a conversation with a member of the TMA on the mountain, and one of the things he said was, we have to do this to restore the Māori of the land. It might not be scientific, it might not fit with any ecological literature, but it's what we need to do and it's our way. And so I'm curious, is there any other piece to speak to that particular sentiment?
I think over the last 200 years, all of us have been taking a journey like time travelers. There's the history of what happened before, and that's quite clear. I think that's what's important, that a lot of Māori, Pākehā, all of those that live here in New Zealand have been denied the history as it was. A lot of particularly the Native School Suppression Act in 1871, it really disallowed, Māori language, Māori history to be taught to everybody in terms of what really happened over the history of the confiscation, of why, other cultures from Europe and that were coming here, what happened, the transactions leading up to the Declaration of Independence in 1835, what does that mean? A lot of New Zealanders, with respect because of the education system, have been denied the truth. And also in terms of the irrelevance of the Treaty of Waitangi, most people think that it's just a holiday. They don't actually know the importance of what it means in terms of that relationship and the honour and the respect accorded in that in terms of how we work together. So there's a lot that we have achieved, and I think there's some of the positive things that have happened. The establishment of Kohanga Reo, establishment of the Kaupapa Māori, establishment of Māori Wānanga, the different programs throughout educational institutions that enable us to be part of the normalization of te reo and Māori history. Also, Māori television, Māori radio, the legislation, the Māori Language Act, and in recent times, of course, the Ngā Mai I Korona, where we're wanting to achieve 1 million speakers of te reo Māori by 2040. So what I'm trying to say is there is a lot of good positive things happening by Māori, Pākehā, and non-Māori, but it's when will the rest of the nation catch up? That's the question. And so it's about sort of attitudinal change, shift, but it also comes down to your heart and how much your heart wants to shift, because your heart determines what you think. And from that comes the change. And I think that this relationship that we have with Honora Maunga and with us as Ngāti Awa ki te Awa te Atua, I rā moko marae te tāwera hapū, is going to be a platform that can show that this actually can be a reality, that it does work, that it's real, that it's not just the Treaty of Waitangi document, hanging up on the wall in some institution. We want it to be a living, breathing, and a reality that shifts and changes, not only for Māori, but for what's best for all of us. And what's best for us at this point in time, and particularly regarding the relationship that we have with Honora Maunga, is about protecting the raka, protecting the maunga, protecting Owairaka, protecting all the narrative and the histories that are there. Because history is very fluid. We have the ancient history, but then you have the now history, the 200 years history that now exists, or the 400-year history. Who are we to deny that in terms of the trees that are there now, to just take it away just like that instantly without any thought about it? Is wrong. So transformation only happens if you've got a good heart, that you're not clouded by power and control and money and status. That's what's the problem. And actually not being afraid to get out there and find out the truth. Decolonisation is about finding the true path. Don't be clouded with lies and being deceived. Particularly the media is very dangerous. So this is an opportunity through this platform, this forum, to hear from me directly, rather than judging what you think I've said. That's half of the decolonisation process, is to find out the truth. And then when you find the truth, you'll be set free, you'll be empowered, you can then be transformed to judge your own attitude in terms of what the truth is. And the trees are important, they need to be saved, they need to be looked after, because Owairaka's essence is in there. And therefore, if we don't do this, well, COVID-19 has been quite clear. There's a lot of signs out there. Wake up. We must decolonize ourselves so that we can actually know the truth. To live in the reality of what is real, not live in the matrix where something is unreal. Mā te kōrero ka moho, only through what we find out do we actually be empowered. Mā te moho ka marama, then we have enlightenment, transformation, and then we're on the process of decolonization.
Thank you.
Yeah, decolonisation, it's a very, very big question, and it's unfortunately being treated in an incredibly simplistic way in the news media. Māori versus Māori, good versus bad, and it's so much more complex than that. I first of all, though, want to acknowledge that it's absolutely imperative that our nation acknowledges the true histories, and there's many histories out there of Māori, non-Māori, Pākehā, Chinese, you name it. All histories need to be acknowledged, the good, the bad, and the in-between. And I'd really like to acknowledge the terrible things that have happened, injustices that have happened and are still happening to Māori in many different ways, and there are many thousands of sad stories. But redressing that has to be more complex and more nuanced and more sustainable than simply acts of destruction that actually just perpetuate wrongs but in a different way. And I don't believe that going and destroying all the exotic trees on Auckland's Maunga and probably other places too is actually going to fix anything. It's a tokenistic form of decolonisation that actually, when you think about it, is acting like the colonists acted, ironically. I'm not a Māori person. I have no Māori ancestry in me, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about this issue. I've spent a lot of time engaging with Māori people, in Pouroto as an example. And one of the things that's become clear to me in this is that the Te Puna Maunga Authority, and Pouroto, you might want to just add to this, but in my observation and from my discussions and understanding is that the Te Puna Maunga Authority is not acting with tikanga or in accordance with tikanga in its own ways of being. And decolonisation needn't be a destructive thing. I feel really sad that the authority didn't take a constructive approach to its big picture vision of native revegetation and regeneration on Auckland's Maunga, because it's actually a vision that has support of everyone I've spoken to. So why not take a constructive approach that actually engages all communities, mana whenua and non-mana whenua, Aucklanders and non-Aucklanders, and what could be a really exciting and heartening and educational and inspiring and spiritual journey to that native regeneration, and learning about the histories and cultures and customs, and ngā mana whenua history and culture and customs, but bringing everyone on that journey. So I guess it was quite a long-winded way of saying Te Puna Maunga Authority had many ways it could have played this. It doesn't have to be like this. So I would love to see decolonisation done in a way that brings everybody on the journey, because at the end of the day, we've still all got to live together. And simply putting the boot on the other foot and using the birds and the trees as a weapon in this actually achieves nothing for nobody, and certainly not for the Maunga.
Thank you. The last question, I think both of you have already spoken to it in a few different ways, but it's how is the work that Honor the Maunga is doing and the work that we're doing together honoring treaty principles?
I want to, acknowledge Owairaka, my ancestor. Really, I mean, first and foremost, at that moment in time, 3 or 4 months ago, I with respect, I didn't know Honor the Maunga existed. So that's what's important from our point of view, is that I'm always covered by this. I'm always led by spiritual. And everything that I do, everything I say, everything I do in terms of the world, I tried my best to be governed by that, the wisdom of my ancestors. So it wasn't by mistake. The day after we cleaned up the puna, Owairaka's puna at Unitec. I mean, that's really important to us, because those places are connected to the Maunga. And so, we ended up coming together. So and I believe the energy of Honor the Maunga and what they stand for has a spiritual essence in its own special way. So that energy came together with our energy, and the Treaty of Waitangi relationship also automatically happens once you engage with non-Māori, once you engage with other cultures. It automatically becomes the way in terms of how we as mana whenua, as tangata whenua, as Māori, engage with our treaty partner. And that's how it's happened. I provided the support and the spiritual dimension that would keep Honor the Maunga safe in terms of prior to us arriving there. There were a lot of issues, a lot of racist issues, a lot of judgmental issues that were wrong. A lot of the comments that were made by others were actually people who aren't from Ono the Maunga too. You know, they have a structure like ours where we have the leadership, the executive, and then you have the membership. So it has to be quite precise and specific about when comments are made. Not just anyone is able to speak on behalf of Ono the Maunga, and that's what's being also out there on media as being, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. And it depends on how that message is portrayed. So I've always known there's a structure, there's people that have been given the leadership to look after and protect the interests of Ono the Maunga, just as our structure has that as well. And we're learning that together as we go. The Māori approach, the Ono the Maunga approach, I see it as the Treaty of Waitangi approach. Partnership that we're developing is strong to the extent that we had the pōhiri that was held there by Taimi, by Ngāti Whātua representatives, by other Māori from other tribes who validated and confirmed it, by our presence being there, by the community being there, by the local community being there. So that was tikanga that was done correctly. Everyone was invited to participate and be part of that relationship. And I think that's really important. Because of that relationship, there's been a lot of positive things that have happened for all of us. There's been a lot of consciousness issues being brought forward from the subconscious so that everyone's fully informed about the issue. There's no racist issue here. That is just a whole lot of nonsense. The relationship and the partnership that we have with Ono the Maunga is a mana decision that we've made because the issue is protecting the whenua, protecting the maunga, protecting the history, and we can't do that in isolation of ourselves. We need to do that together, and this is a meaningful way for us to be able to achieve that. It's an environmental issue, but it's a human issue, and it's important that people are aware that we've also, our hapu is invited and extended an invitation, and so we're developing that relationship even more. That our marae is pleased and proud to invite Ono the Maunga to be part of our marae as our whānau. So I mean, that is an important step forward in terms of treaty relationships for us. And we embrace it, we recognise it, we know our place, we're sort of finding out how all these things work. There's a structure there, we have a structure, we've sat down to talk about our vision, where we're going to, based upon Te Tāwera Hapu, our vision, based upon Ono the Maunga's vision, but because of the values and how they interconnect, there was really not much issues with us. And the reason why our relationship and partnership in protecting the trees, protecting the mountain, protecting the kuia, Owairaka, and the spirit of Owairaka was easy for us to do. And that's what real Treaty Waitangi relationships are about. You know, I've gone beyond celebrating the treaty once a year. I live and breathe and walk the Treaty of Waitangi, and that's what we need to start doing at a local level. That the power and control of the people, for the people, by the people, power to the people. All these government agencies have to remember, you put there by us. Without that mandate from Māori and Pākehā, there's no government. And that's what's important about this relationship. By the people, for the people. By hapu, for hapu. By marae, for marae. By our local community, for the local community. That's really the essence of what the treaty to us is about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key aspect of the treaty is partnership. And when there's a partnership, it's about all parties in that partnership moving forward together in a way that actually benefits all. And obviously, as history's played out in New Zealand since the treaty, that the balance of the partnership has been, you know, weighted in not necessarily in Māori's favour, not at all in Māori's favour in many respects, and I totally acknowledge that. But if we fast forward to the Collective Redress Act, which placed ownership of the moanga in a collective of mana whenua, but held in trust for the benefit of everybody, so the intention was for there to be a partnership, and that's why Te Pūnamonga Authority was set up as a co-governance organisation. But what's really sad is there's been no partnership. I feel that the authority has failed iwi really badly, and it has failed the other people of Auckland really badly, because if there had been a partnership, we wouldn't be in this situation now. And in many ways, I think that a lot of the Owairaka tree situation and Maunga tree situation could be resolved if we just push the authority out of the picture, and if local communities and ngā mana whenua themselves actually sat down together and talked about it. Because I don't actually know what ngā mana whenua wants in relation to their trees, because their voices are silent here, apart from Ngāti Whātua saying that they actually don't feel the authorities, done well in this debate, and a number of kamatua from Ngāti Whātua and Tainui and other Māori people saying that they feel deeply disturbed. So why not get all the crap out of the way and focus back in on partnership and what's right for the Maunga themselves and all of us as partners that need to coexist together. How can we do this together? So I just think it's time to actually talk to each other. Take the media out of it. Take Te Pūnamonga Authority out of it. Why doesn't mana whenua, ngā mana whenua and the other peoples of Auckland sit down and have a discussion with integrity?
Thank you both so much.
Kia ora. It was a good opportunity, Sama, to work together, to present two perspectives, yet informing and empowering our community so that they know the truth. And that's what is mā te tika ka moho, only through the truth will you be set free in terms of what is real and what is not real. So, that's the position we take. We respect all iwi, hapu, whānau, taurehere groups and tamaki makaurau. I'm always here and available, as I've always said over the last few years on the marae in Auckland, that we're here to support at any time that you want to meet and engage with us. That invitation is always there. And the respect is always there. Sometimes there are things and decisions that we may not like, but at the end of the day, from my point of view, there's certain things that I can do and there's certain things I cannot do. But I can present this unified position today on behalf of my people here in Te Awa Teatua, on behalf of Te Tāwera Hapu and Ngāti Awa ki Te Awa Teatua, because that is the only true mandate of representation I do here. But I can participate in making sure that we decolonize by providing the information and the history so that people have understanding. That this platform also is coming directly from us as a treaty partnership. We have different ways of expressing that, and that's good. Mine is all about mā te tika, what is right with integrity and respect, mā te pono, being always truthful and believing in what we say, but being cognizant and respectful to what other people say. And mā te aroha, of course, for the most powerful gift of all. All things can be overcome with the power of love. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's been a very the whole tree process, since we first learnt about the plan to fell Owairaka's trees, back in November 2019, and the journey since then has been so many highs and lows. We've learnt a lot, we've thought a lot. It's been very inspiring at times, but it's also been painful because the process of developing a true treaty partnerships in New Zealand is not a simplistic one. And unfortunately, a lot of the debate at the moment, it's very simplistic. And the way forward lies in that difficult middle ground where there's a lot of self-examination and, you know, really understanding the nuances. And it can be a very painful process for all concerned, but that's the path I think we need to all of us travel. But, you know, as the old saying goes, you know, no pain, no gain. So I'm hopeful that I'm really excited about the partnership that Ono the Maunga, you know, has with Iramoko Marae Te Tarawa Hapu, because I think that it's role modelling, you know, how things can work in a positive treaty partnership, working together while respecting our differences, but using the best of all of it to walk forward together in a way that benefits all of us, everything, everyone.
Thank you, and blessings to everybody.